talk about it.
We did have time to talk about it, but now we must move on to other things, including our guest now, Dr. Ben Carson. You mentioned his credentials a little bit earlier. Dr. Carson's been our guest before. Talk about his book, his latest book called America the Beautiful. He is also a featured speaker, as we know, at the Presidential Prayer Breakfast.
Yeah, he was at the National Prayer Breakfast in February, spoke for 25 minutes, and became very well known amongst conservative circles because of the issues that he dealt with the president sitting right there and a whole host of the top political folks in the country.
Dr. Carson, Tim, and Ed with you. Thanks for being our guest again today.
Well, thank you. Nice to be with you again.
You in Baltimore?
I am.
Is that where you grew up, by the way?
No, I grew up in Detroit, but I've been in Baltimore for the last 36 years.
Is that because of your work at the hospital there?
Yes, exactly. As a kid in Detroit, I grew up loving medicine, and I used to listen to any medical story, and so many of them featured Johns Hopkins. And I said, one day I want to work at Johns Hopkins. So dreams do come true.
Wow. Hey, what's the movie that's your life based on?
It's called Gifted Hands, and it's based on the book. And it was done without a lot of Hollywood intervention, because that was the reason that I waited so long. A lot of people wanted to do a movie, but they believed in artistic license. And I said, not with my life, because, they'd have you having an affair with a nurse and all kind of stuff to provide intrigue. And I said, no.
No, we're going to keep this just like the story happened, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dr. Carson, I know you've talked about this a lot in terms of those 25 minutes that you spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast. How has the media treated you since then in the last month or so? I know you've done interviews. I think one of the recent ones I noted, CNN. How has the media generally treated you since then?
Really, they've tried to be reasonable, and I think I hope that continues. There've been a few who try to slip in trick questions and trip you up, but for the most part, they've been very fair.
What? Why was there such a shock at? I mean, you were a featured speaker. You got 25 minutes, and you say some things that. Were they considered direct challenges to President Obama's policies, or what was the controversy much about?
I'm still trying to figure that out, because what I did was speak about what was on my heart, the things that are so important to maintain, the greatness of our country and to be able to pass it on to the next generation with everything intact. And so anybody who was offended by what I was saying must be in a different place.
Well, I don't know that how many people were really offended. I guess, you said President Obama shook your hand and said, thanks for coming, didn't you?
Exactly.
Yeah. Which was big of him, I think, given the fact that, you were talking about some things that he would have obviously disagreed with you on politically. You're listening to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Our guest is Dr. Benjamin Carson. And, by the way, what website do you want people to go to?
CarsonScholars.org.
Carson's Scholars?
Yeah, Carson with no S, and then the S is with scholars. So just one S, CarsonScholars.org.
And that's based. You have a scholarship program that website would connect people to.
That's correct. And that gives you a lot of information.
What is your as you prayed about what to say at the prayer breakfast,
right?
And you wrote down your ideas, and then you presented them. What is it that's motivating you? I mean, why do you care about the issues that you care about?
Because I care about America. I think America is a very special place. And, despite what anybody says, we are a Judeo-Christian nation. Our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, talked about certain inalienable rights given to us by our Creator. Our Pledge of Allegiance says we are one nation under God. Every coin in our pocket, every bill in our wallet says, in God we trust. And yet we seem to be throwing God under the bus and moving away into a secular progressive type of society. And, I'm very concerned about that. I'm very concerned about the fact that we don't care about the next generation anymore. I'm concerned about the fact that the president says the deficit is not that big a problem. Give me a break. $16.5 trillion. You can't even conceive of that number. And all you got to do is open your eyes and look around the world and see what's happening to the nations who've neglected fiscal responsibility. What makes us so great that it can't happen to us? That is the type of arrogance that is very destructive.
By the way, this is Tim Wildman with the Advertising. We're talking to Dr. Ben Carson. You're a doctor. You went to school, 10 years probably?
Even longer.
Well, longer than that to get your training. And you're talking about God. Shouldn't you be talking about science?
Well, I think God and science are very compatible. Some people would disagree, and they say, how can a man of science believe that God created us, that God created the world? That's just a myth. But, I could easily answer by saying, so you believe that there was nothing, and all of a sudden there was something, and then everything became extremely organized, and even us, as sophisticated as we are with our brains, which are very complex, it just happened. I think that requires more faith than it does to believe in God.
Dr. Carson, one of the issues you addressed in your speech was political correctness. And it seems as if political correctness has kind of come out of the moral relativism that took root, certainly, beginning in the 60s, starting to at least back in that decade and with that generation. But one of the things that is so frustrating for people who believe in absolute values is that the very people, for example, who scream the loudest about tolerance are usually the least likely to grant it to anyone else. And then the people who demand that you not offend this group or that group are one of the
most offensive people.
Right, they are the most offensive. How do people process that when you talk to people in maybe the fallout or discussions about political correctness, which you addressed? How do people seem to navigate that contradiction?
Well, the people who are actually capable of listening tend to understand it quite well. Some people are not capable of listening. They're just waiting for you to stop talking so that they can, throw out whatever it is that they believe. The fact of the matter is, you don't have to believe in political correctness to be kind to people and to be courteous and respectful of people. What political correctness does is it puts a damp blanket on conversation. And people are afraid to actually express what they really believe. And how do you make progress when that's the case? And no two people should believe the same thing about anything because they've been raised in different ways. And I always say if two people think the same about everything, one of them isn't necessary. We just have to get over all of this acrimony that is instigated by certain politicians who derive their power by creating friction and saying to this group, I'm your person, and those people are the bad people, and trying to divide people. And a lot of the media also derives their relevance by creating fractions.
Talking to Dr. Benjamin Carson, you can visit his website. It's www.carsonscholars.org, carsonscholars.org. What's there at the website?
At the website, it talks about the program, the Carson Scholars Program, as well as the reading rooms that we put in to try to get people to be literate again, and also there's information about me, and then at the realbencarson.org is my other website, which has nothing to do with the Carson Scholars.
Okay, Dr. Carson, the family unit in America has been under siege and disintegrating. We've seen that, and that's probably a large part of our social problems. Obviously, in particular, the black family, 73%, I think, babies born out of wedlock. This has created great stress on the black family. Is there any hope for a reversal, a change there?
Yes, but I think we have to start talking about it. It's politically incorrect because all family structures are supposed to be equal in a politically correct world, and they're not equal, and they don't have equal outcomes. And those babies who are born into those families have somewhere between 4 and 9 times the likelihood of growing up in poverty without the right kinds of opportunities or influences. So we're not doing them any favors, and we need to start making sure that those young ladies understand that they need to respect themselves. Don't submit yourself to every little John who comes along talking pretty to you, and you are worth much more than that. And we need to tell those young fellows that you're being irresponsible to sow your seed like that and to let your legacy go down the drain like that.
Dr. Carson, I actually have great, sympathy with, the argument that, young people who grow up in inner cities with schools that are overrun by, drugs and gangs, if you are one of those who graduates, you may not even be able to read at an 8th grade level. And then if there are no jobs, I certainly am sympathetic to how many obstacles that would put in front of people who want to succeed.
Absolutely.
But there doesn't seem to be any substitute for that family unit where you're talking about young ladies who learn to respect themselves because there is a dad in the home who models, from our perspective anyway, a godly manhood and a mother who is treated with respect by her husband. There doesn't seem to be any, and the same thing would be true for a young man, of course,
Sure.
too, growing up. There doesn't seem to be anything you can do to replace that, and it seems to me that the government attempting to do that through the welfare system, even though I certainly understand you can't just let people starve, but the government cannot model inside the home what a father is supposed to model.
No, it definitely doesn't. And, a lot of what the government does through the politically elite class, to me, is very disgusting because they come along and pat the downtrodden on the head and say, you poor little thing. Those people have taken advantage of you. It's because of them that you're in this situation. But don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that. And that sort of keeps them happy, and they'll vote for you. And they're not really making that many attempts to elevate themselves. But you can keep them down there so that you can be the elite class. I think it's rather disgusting, and I hope people learn to see through that. And we need to get that can-do attitude back. And those of us who have prospered in our society, we need to recognize that we have an obligation to help those people because, for every one of those young people we keep from going down that path of destruction, it's one less person we have to be afraid of or protect our families from, one less person we have to pay for in the penal system or the welfare system, one more tax-paying productive member of society who may discover a new energy source or the cure for cancer. They're all very, very valuable. We need to invest in them.
Talking to Dr. Benjamin Carson, Obamacare. What's that like? What's that going to do to the American healthcare system in the next couple of years, you think?
To turn it upside down.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. More things are coming out every day, but, the cost of it is just enormous. So it obviously is going to have a very negative impact on employment. It already has. And a lot of people, instead of hiring people full-time, will hire people who work less than 30 hours because then you're not responsible for the health care. They have to go out and get, one of these programs that's being offered. And doctors, of course, are fleeing the system. You're seeing an explosion of concierge practices where they don't...
What?
Concierge practice.
What is that?
That's where they don't accept any insurance. They will accept like 300 or 400 patients. Each of those patients pays $3,000-$4,000 a year, and they take care of all their issues. And then they can go back to their insurance company, the patient can, and try to get reimbursement. And that has exploded. And it's becoming more difficult for people to find a primary care physician. There's going to be just an enormous amount of turmoil. And the thing that's so sad about it is it doesn't have to be that way. We have very easy ways of taking care of this. We already put twice as much money into health care per capita as the next closest nation. So it's not a matter of where is the money going to come from. It's a matter of how is the money spent.
And, Dr. Carson, one of the things that seems to be coming, you mentioned more and more information